What's up, y'all? It's Drew. If you know me, that's what's up. If you don't, essentially, I'm here to show you guys the real purpose of my project, and it's to get down and gritty with how African Americans feel in America. We're going to be talking about this, and overall this. So, without any further ado, let's get to it.
You know what free is? What's free? Free is when nobody else can tell us what to be. Free is when the TV ain't controlling what we see. Told my I need you. Through all the fame, you know I stay true. Pray my stay free. Made a few mistakes, but this ain't where I wanna be. Before I'm judged by 12, put a 12 on my feet. Told my I need you. Stay up, I know these times ain't true. Real life was
Since the
free.
lad I was cunning, just got a pad out in London. I keep stacking my money, I need a ladder by summer. 8K shots, ducking straight shots. Been a top dog, that's before the K dots. Cracking in 06, immaculate showmanship. Talking like you Mitch, disastrous on the strip. Holding on your bitch, could've never sold you a brick. With them people, you never been on the list. Mona Lisa to me ain't nothing but a bitch. Hanging pictures like swinging from his dick. We so different, you thought these didn't exist. The megalodon never seen on his wrist. I'm from the south where they never make it this rich. God is the greatest, but Satan been on his shit. Walking the pavement, I pray I'm illuminated. Over a decade and never nobody's favorite. Pot and kilo go hand in hand like we gamble and huff. My amigo, 1,000,000 grams when we count them and up. You was dead broke, I let you hold it back. You paid for it, but I fuck around and stole the track. Screaming gang, gang, now you wanna rap. Racketeering charges, caught them on the tap. Looking for a bond, lawyers want to tax. Purple hair, got them on your back.
What's free? Free is when nobody else can tell us what to be. Free is when the TV ain't.
Our Black Lives Matter principles, just so no one gets confused and to say that our movement is negative. This is all that we stand for. Diversity, restorative justice, unapologetic black families, black women, black villages, globalism, love and engagement, empathy, queer affirming, and transgender affirming. Don't get it twisted. How you doing today?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm all right. Okay, so first question. Do you think that in today's society, people from different races and backgrounds are treated equally? Why or why not?
I say no because it always just seems like people with different backgrounds or different ethnicities or races are treated like beneath others or are treated way differently than others, in my opinion. Because, and I'm going to say, well, because of their skin tone or certain stuff like that. So yeah, I think they're definitely treated differently in this society.
Great. On a scale from 1 to 10, how racist do you think our country is?
Hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm not gonna give them a 10, but I think our country is about an 8.5 with racism. Between all communities. It's not just between the white and the black community, the white and the Hispanic community, the white and the Asian community. All communities participate in certain racisms towards each other, in my opinion. And I feel like our country definitely needs to work harder on changing that in this world, because we are supposed to be equal and unified. And the racism within our country really divides us, as we seen last summer with what happened with everything going on. Our country was like very, very divided. And it's starting to be shown in different communities, not just the black community. And I get that the black community is like, well, they don't stand with us, but I don't know how to explain that, but it's just like, I think we just all need to help each other out of this hundreds of years worth of racism that was built, this country was built with technically. So yeah, that's my view on racism in this country.
All right. What are your thoughts and beliefs on how police officers act in certain situations?
My thoughts are that police officers are not properly, in my opinion, are not properly trained for certain situations that they are placed in. For example, what happened with Ma'Khia Bryant, I think her situation was handled, it could have been handled a whole lot differently than what it was. And I can see people's point of views where she had a knife, she was going to stab someone else. But I don't think that he had to shoot her. I feel like he could have shot warnings to the sky, but I don't think he had to actually point the gun and shoot her.
There was a lot of things that he could have done.
Yeah, differently for that situation. I think police officers try to immediately go for the gun hole, like they immediately try to go for the gun, and it's not always necessary for certain situations. Now, if someone puts a gun out on you as a police officer, then yes, that's when you should at least pull your gun out in defense for yourself. But if you see no weapon, if you don't even think that you see a weapon, I think it's other stuff that you can do before you make that move of immediately pulling out your gun in certain situations. And not, so yeah, I think they definitely de-escalate situations a lot harsher than they need to, and that's just my opinion.
Do you think the media has had a big impact on how people of color are viewed in the world?
Yes, I think it has a huge impact. For example, what happened last summer with George Floyd, if his video would have never gotten out into the media, I don't think the issue would have been as big as it was. People were protesting in different, not only in our country, in different states in our country, but also around the world. So I think it had media has a big impact on showing us like the troubles and stuff that people go through, like in our countries and other countries and stuff like that. Like in the 60s, they didn't really have media to show what really happened down south with Jim Crow laws and stuff. So
I agree.
The media really opens people's eyes to new things that they never thought was possible, I guess. Like, a lot of people were very, very shocked in what happened with George Floyd. So I think the media really has increased the eye-opener to other people that are ignorant to situations. So yes, I think it has a huge impact on the views of people of color and other people that have been discriminated against.
All right, man. I have a few questions for you, if you don't mind me asking. So, first one. What does the word equality mean to you?
Equality is when multiple people from different ethnic backgrounds are treated equally.
Okay. Do you feel like political leaders promote equality in today's society?
No. Mostly, every person in the political office today is either a white man, a white woman, or a whitewashed black person.
Very direct. On a scale of 1 to 10, how racist do you think our country is?
10.
Why you say that?
It's 10.
Okay. What's up, guys? Can y'all see your names for me, please?
My name is Najon Washington.
Ariel Taylor.
All right, so just for my little Agents of Change project, I'm just going to ask you guys a few questions. Why do you think there is so much racism in this world, and what do you believe the foundation was?
You want to start?
You can start.
I believe there's so much racism in the world. Probably partly psychological, because humans in general, anything different from themselves, they can find small differences, but I feel like probably the largest percentage, the culprit of racism is probably like comfortability with racism. For those who are racist, I think they're comfortable with how things were, and it's very difficult to change. And then those who have been impacted by the evils of racism, it's difficult to kind of free yourself from an oppressed mindset. So probably both.
Well, yeah, I think the foundation of America is really rooted in kind of power struggles. And when we look at the history, there always has to be kind of somebody on top and someone at the bottom. And that has kind of always continued, whether it be capitalism, race, all those types of different things. And the mindset and generational trauma that is forced with that kind of continues the same ability for the same people to kind of oppress the opposite race.
Or whatever the opposition is.
Yeah.
Very happy. What does the word equality mean to you?
Equality, and just like a blanket statement, is starting off at the same place, having the same opportunities, and being afforded the same pathways.
Yeah, can you say it in a better than
Do you believe people of color or African Americans have equality?
Never. Never.
No.
Black people have never had equality. Didn't have equality in Africa. They didn't have equality on the boats, and they damn sure ain't have equality coming over to America.
I'm gonna keep that in. That's real.
Okay.
I meant what I said.
Hey, at the end of the day, do you feel like political leaders promote equality in today's society?
I will say that in rhetoric, yes. Action, no. But I'm not demonizing them either. I'm saying it's very difficult for a lot of them to uphold a lot of the ideals that they have just by like the structure of the institution itself.
I agree.
But yeah, no, I mean, I guess that's my statement. In rhetoric, yes. In action, no. But I don't know how much we can fault them for the action piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think that overall, no in action. I think some in rhetoric, but I think even with rhetoric, they play a fine line. And I think sometimes, like, the communities that politicians of color represent is more broader. And I think sometimes we don't realize kind of African Americans being 13% and how that, like, translates into makeup and votes and all those different types of things. And so if we want to have these spaces and we want to occupy these places at the table, we also have to understand having the diverse perspective of being able to be palatable for a broad general sense. But because there's so much inequality for African Americans, the expectation is that Black politicians are going to kind of assist in this effort when they're pretty much at the same place,
really
just at a different and they're at the same place. They're just at the same place in a different place in their career. So it's like, in the same way that you might face inequality in your workspace, they face inequality every day being a politician. It's just that they have to navigate that differently in a political sphere.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that, because I feel like specifically the 13%, 12% is the piece that's very difficult for a lot of people to comprehend, mostly because our communities is all you see. But like, when you really think about how that translates in terms of votes, it's not even half. So
it ain't even 25%.
Yeah, so it's like, maybe if you live in a city that's mostly, whatever you represent, but it's not realistic for us to push this idea that they should only be for X amount of groups, specifically when those groups make up such a small percentage. So I think, like, if the focus was more on making sure that everybody had everything that they need, and that those in the community can integrate in a way that's beneficial and sustainable for all parties involved, that would be the best way to think about it. But to kind of like push this on like people of color who are politicians is just not really realistic.
I think it's also important to understand that, like, Black people are not monolithic. So every Black person doesn't have the same idea of equality, nor do they have the same idea of what integration looks like. So when you talk about what someone's politics are, they may be Black, but that doesn't mean that their definition, they may be conservative, they may be liberal, and they might have a different politic code than the next, but it doesn't really all fall under this same umbrella just because of their skin color.
Yeah, I feel like the craziest way to think about it, honestly, which I think would be helpful for like our white counterparts, is most of the issues in America are a rich and poor issue. Pretty much all of them. The problem with racism is that it overlaps for Black people because most of the poor people are Black. So then that's exactly. So that's why most people say, "Oh, like this is racist. Racism is integrated in institution." While all those things are true, it's really more so the fact of the wealth gap and like what that means for people who are impoverished. Because if most of the impoverished people were white or Asian or whatever, it would be the same. It's just that's not the case.
That's an interesting take. Giving me a lot. I'm gonna give you guys 2 more questions. Is that okay?
That's fine.
All right. What are your beliefs, thoughts, and beliefs on how a police officer acts in certain situations regarding African Americans?
What do you mean, like in general?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in general, I think in general, the police force, holistically, just needs reformation, specifically around like how you trauma informed with certain groups, and certain groups like mentally disabled, people who are mentally unstable, and then just a whole different teaching and learning on how to interact with the Black community, specifically because there's so much distrust. There's such a history of violence against Black people, like at the hands of police. So I think in order to have any type of like cordial or just like mutually beneficial future moving forward, there has to be a complete just like reformation around the teaching, the training that goes in to the police force.
And I kind of want to touch on what Ariel said, because she said mainly my points in the police force, but I think a bigger concern is something to look at is the criminal justice system as a whole, what the criminal justice system was built off of and the mechanisms that was utilized against African Americans based on history and kind of even the beginnings of what police forces looked and being implemented in Black communities to harm Black people. So I think when we look at the criminal justice system, we look at a system that's not really meant for rehabilitation, and really is just a system built to get more and more people in there. And we, you know, all of the stories and all the different things that go into how Black people in mass incarceration, I don't really need to explain that. But when we look at the system, we look how prison and the criminal justice system has become a profitable business for America and getting labor and getting different things like that. And so I think
cyclic.
And I think
people come back.
And I think before we could even address police officers, I mean, because the base of police should be to protect and serve, and the protect and serve and arresting people is really meant, like in other countries we see, is really meant for rehabilitation. You take somebody off the streets to heal them and put them back on there to get them on a new path. But we can't really amend a system where you put people in prison where 73% of them are going to come back into the prison system. We can't really affect anything when people are sitting in prison just because they can't pay their bail coming out. So I think there's a lot of parts to the criminal justice system that can't even really be touched upon. And then you have a police system where they're acting out of fear and they're not acting to really protect. Their first instinct is to initiate off of that fear, and it's just a layered issue.
Yeah, just say on that, like what you said about kind of like the aim in other countries. I feel like the aim in other countries is really important to them to rehabilitate for the simple fact that they want to have productive members of society. And I feel like where we went wrong as a country is considering prison labor as like a productive section of society. I feel like we're not reaching our full potential as for like what this large part of our community can bring to the table, like economically. Yeah,
and I think even when we look at prisons and how many people occupy prisons, I mean, we're at like what, 60 million of people in prison. And when we look at those numbers, it's kind of crazy looking at what other countries, and then you look at a 73% retention rate of people coming back into the prison system, and then you look at how many people's social economic status is lowered just by coming out. They can't get jobs, they can't vote, they can't do anything. And then we have to also tackle the distinction of what somebody going to prison means. I mean, how many cousins, brothers, sisters, when they go to jail, jail, it's like, oh, that's the cousin who went to jail. That's the person who went to jail. No matter the crime. I mean, a lot of people, 60% of black people are in prison for drug offenses. Has nothing to do with any type of violent crime, was just doing drugs. And in drug offenses, if you're gonna put a drug addict into prison, what stops them from coming out? What stops the system for them getting drugs in the prison? So I think that it really is a decision that needs to be made, that we're putting people in prison for a reason and a why.
You know what that is, Bison?
It's the Howard education.
Okay.
All right. Last question. Since the development of the Black Lives Matter movement, do you believe that the court systems are demonstrating more equality or equity in their decisions?
The court system?
I think for the most part they're just pandering to the black community, so civil unrest can kind of balance out. I'm not going to say there hasn't. I can't say that there hasn't been any move in a positive direction, because that's simply not true. I think in general, culturally, we're moving in a different direction. But as far as like the judicial system, definitely pandering.
Yeah, I think when we look at the judicial system, I think it's important, one, to understand like the precedents and like how it works in terms of court system picking and choosing the cases, like state Supreme Courts and the United States Supreme Court on getting these cases, and the decision making that comes with these laws. So we just saw in Oklahoma that they basically said that you have the right to run over a protester if they're in the streets. And there's continuously like these kind of Nixon laws put in place to kind of bar individuals from kind of doing action. And there's been a lot more legislation of conservatives trying to push for this kind of what they would label radical action of Black Lives Matter to kind of be barred, banned, or enforceable by the police. And I think that when it comes to the overall Black Lives Matter, I think there's a shift and a cultural shift from black people of kind of trying to demand better. And I think that in kind of after Trayvon Martin and seeing kind of the shift of like, you know, the start of Black Lives Matter, people weren't really willing to lose a lot during that time period. And I think when COVID came, it was a lot more of a situation where people were realizing that like life is shorter and like the life quality and all of that is to be cherished. And now people are willing to get pepper spray, willing to go to jail and all those different types of things. And to be honest, I mean, when we look at our history, the only way that we are able to enact change in this country is radical change. And so I think that like the only culture shift has nothing to do with judicial, but has everything to do with the mindset. And I think we have a lot more allies. Like I think people don't, you know, emphasize that enough, but there's a lot more people willing to go out on the streets and willing to say like because we look at, you know, the number of mixed families and the number of people who have relation to black people are just so much greater than it was in the 80s and 60s. And in seeing that, there's a lot more people who can say, oh, my best friend, my brother-in-law, my sister, my wife, my husband, my child. Yeah, my child is half black. So it's like there's a lot more relations, so there's a lot more support there. So that's really the big culture shift.
Well, one, thank you guys for doing this for me. I really appreciate it.
Anything for our baby bison?
Here we go. Thank you, and yeah, that's all I got.